2020 took away many of the things I took for granted, like hugging a loved one, sitting in a movie theater, or simply smiling at a stranger when walking down the street. The silver lining is that it has made those moments so much more meaningful when I finally get to do them again. Pixar's new film Soul is an excellent illustration of exactly that. Finding meaning in the small, ordinary things in life.
This film could not have come out at a better time, as we are all dealing with this pandemic
that has currently put our whole world on pause. I went into Soul knowing nothing about it other than that it was a landmark film for African American representation in cinema. That alone was an exciting achievement, but it also proved to be one of Pixar's, if not Pixar's, most mature and thought-provoking film yet. This film inspires me to continue growing and leveling up as a person, so that when the universe decides to press play on our world, I have more to offer to the ones I love around me. The film begins with Joe Gardner, who is excellently voiced by Jamie Foxx. He is a middle school band teacher who is immensely passionate about jazz and simply feels like his life is passing him by. When an old student of his tells him that he has the chance to audition for a local famous jazz band, he feels as though his life has finally delivered his calling. Tragically, before he can get to his audition, he is killed and sent to the great beyond, a place where all souls go when they die. Joe, however, refuses to pass on and stumbles his way into the great before, a place where unborn souls are given unique personality traits and discover their spark. Joe does not want to die and holds a lot of regret as he feels that he has not fulfilled his life's purpose of becoming a world-renowned jazz musician. There, he meets and befriends 22, who is played by Tina Fey. She is a soul who is in line to receive a human body, but refuses to go to Earth for quite literally hundreds of thousands of years, if not more. It's actually really funny because in her name itself, it illustrates how long she's refused to be born, as there are other characters whose names are quite literally in the hundreds of billions.
Soul number 108,210,121,415. Congratulations, off you go.
She needs to find her spark in order to receive an Earth Pass, and despite having famous mentors like Mother Teresa, Abraham Lincoln, Gandhi, Nicholas Copernicus, George Orwell, and many, many more, she does not feel inspired. In the co-director Kent Power's own words,
so we have this situation where we have a soul who doesn't want to die being stuck with a soul who doesn't want to live.
Soul teaches us that life is not about some grand purpose, but it's quite literally about living. It's about savoring each bite of our favorite food, getting chills when a song from your childhood is played on the radio, swimming on a sunny day at the beach, and lending a shoulder to cry on for someone that you love. Success is something that shouldn't be aimed at, as the more you strive for it, the less likely you will achieve it. I recently read Viktor Frankl's book, Man's Search for Meaning, which has many lessons that overlap with themes found in Soul. Viktor Frankl's philosophy is that success is a lot like happiness. You cannot force yourself to be happy, nor can you force success. Instead, success will come as a byproduct of being passionate and dedicated and investing love and care to a cause or project that is much bigger than our existence. Viktor Frankl stated this call to action beautifully when he wrote, "I want you to listen to what your conscience commands you to do and go on to carry it out to the best of your knowledge. Then, you will see that in the long run I say, success will follow you precisely because you had forgotten to think about it." These words of wisdom prove true for Joe, as when he finally gets to perform with Dorothea Williams and her jazz band, he does not feel fulfilled and says to Dorothea, "So what happens next?" And Dorothea responds with, "We come back and do it all again."
It's just, I've been waiting on this day for my entire life. I thought I'd feel different.
Joe, in this moment, realizes that he's been waiting his whole life for this day of success and fulfillment, but now that he has lived it, he does not feel any different than he felt before. This is because Joe's happiness and perception of success was an imaginary goal point that in reality never really changed the way he felt inside. Moreover, the real happiness and success for Joe was achieved simply by playing and teaching the music that he loves. This concert, though it felt monumental in his mind, gave him the same feeling of purpose and passion as teaching a student how to play the trombone. Dorothea tells him one of the most poignant lines in the film when she says,
"I heard this story about a fish. He swims up to this older fish and says, 'I'm trying to find this thing they call the ocean.' 'The ocean,' says the older fish, 'that's what you're in right now.' 'This,' says the young fish, 'this is water. What I want is the ocean.'"
The fish had imagined the ocean to be this grand and awe-inspiring place and has set its life ambition to finding it, thinking that it will be different there. But in reality, it's been in the ocean all along, and life feels the same as it has always been. Performing on stage with Dorothea didn't enrich Joe's life, but instead, he realized that his love and passion for music is something that he has no matter his circumstances or level of success. Before I move on to the next part of the video, I'd love for you to like and subscribe if you are enjoying this video so far, as it tremendously helps me out with YouTube's mysterious algorithm. No pressure though, and thank you in advance. The film also presents us with two philosophies, essentialism and existentialism, and by the end, existentialism is the winner. Essentialism is the idea that we all have a soul or an essence that precedes our birth and have a predetermined purpose that shapes who we are, what we will become, and ultimately the meaning of our life. It's basically the belief in destiny, and this idea can be traced back to ancient Greek philosophy and was coined by such philosophers as Aristotle, Socrates, and Plato. Existentialism, on the other hand, states that each person does not have a predetermined purpose, but instead has the free will and choice to choose who and what they become in their life. Further, it promotes the idea that every person has the power to create their own meaning for existence. On the surface, it may seem like Soul is an essentialist film, since it quite literally features souls and the story revolves around finding a spark. It is ultimately, however, existentialism that the film is promoting, as 22's purpose is not predetermined in the great before, but instead, she will get to discover her purpose through living her life. At the end of the film, Joe asks one of the great beyond counselors what 22's purpose was, and he answers with,
A spark isn't a soul's purpose. Oh, you mentors and your passions, your purposes, your meanings of life. So basic.
Viktor Frankl's perspective on man's search for meaning is a very unique one, as he experienced humanity in the worst conditions imaginable, in World War II's heinous concentration camps. He and his family and friends had everything in life stripped away from them, not only superficial commercial things such as clothes, books, and jewelry, but also all the things we often take for granted, such as freedom, health, and family. What was left were people who were forced into an immense amount of suffering, pain, and anguish. And in Frankl's own words,
What remained was the man himself, seared by pain and heated red hot by suffering. He was smelted into the essential in him, into the human.
in this quote, Frankl is saying that if our lives are reduced to nothing but suffering, we must find a meaning to make the suffering worth suffering through. Whether it is to see a loved one again, or the dream of finishing a project, or simply eating our favorite meal again, we must create a light for ourselves at the end of the tunnel. With Joe Gardner's death, he was left with the task of reflecting on his life, and throughout the movie began to see the beauty of his life outside of money, power, reputation, and even happiness. He discovered the beauty and purpose in simply existing and enjoying all of the small but precious things life brings. A main theme of Soul is Joe Gardner's and 22's search for a purpose in life. Frankl talks about the power of having a purpose and how those who felt they had a reason to live were more likely to survive the most extreme and difficult life circumstances. As Friedrich Nietzsche famously said, "He who has a why to live for can bear with almost any how." This is proof that living and finding meaning in life is often tied to striving towards a future goal, but that goal does not have to be a grand one. By the end of the film, Joe Gardner discovers that his future goal does not have to be to become a famous jazz musician, but instead can be something as simple as riding a bike, listening to a vinyl with his dad, or sparking a love for music in his band students. Pixar created some very fun visual symbolism with their opening title sequence to demonstrate exactly that life is meaningful even in the simplest of moments. At the beginning of the film, when Joe dies, we see the words Disney Pixar Presents, but do not see the title of the film appear. On first viewing with my brother, he noticed this and actually called it out, thinking it was kind of odd. Little did we know that the title screen would appear at the ending of the movie, when Joe received a second chance of life. It is a symbol of rebirth and his real story just beginning, as he has now learned to find beauty and meaning in simply living. One of my favorite quotes is a quote by Oscar Wilde, where he said that to live is the rarest thing in the world. Most people exist. That is all. This quote summarizes the essence of Soul, as the idea behind the movie is to show the audience that living life to the fullest does not necessarily mean climbing Mount Everest or becoming the next Albert Einstein, but instead it is about enjoying life's simple pleasures, like making a home-cooked meal for those you love or walking through a snow-cloaked forest. That also means having the courage to overcome life's greatest obstacles and having no shame in suffering. Without pain and suffering, there is no balance or value in pleasure and happiness. Viktor Frankl stated that everything can be taken from a man but one thing, the last of the human freedoms, to choose one's attitude in any given circumstance, to choose one's own way. He believed that having the will to get through the hard days or even years of life makes the delightful and simple days that much more valuable. To further quote him, he stated that when we are no longer able to change a situation, just think of an incurable disease such as inoperable cancer, we are challenged to change ourselves. Both 22 and Joe return to Earth in search of a grand purpose. They believe that that is the only way she will receive her Earth pass. However, she instead finds the will to live in the ordinary elements of everyday living, like watching a seed fall from a tree, tasting the sweetness of a lollipop, and visiting Joe's lovable, caring mother. 22 is seeing the extraordinary qualities in what most would call ordinary. We learn that in every moment of life, no matter what is occurring, we have the human ability to choose what we do with our lives, and those unique choices are as a result meaningful. Life and what life brings to you is only a small fraction of what it means to live. It's how you react to life that truly impacts who you are and the meaning you bring to the world.
It is nice to finally talk to you about something other than jazz, yo.
Huh. How come we, never talked about your life before?
You never asked, but I'm glad you did this time.
In Frankl's words, between stimulus and response, there is a space. In that space is our power to choose our response. In our response lies our growth and our freedom. Now, understanding this initially, 22 falls into depression and gets stuck in the land of lost souls, as she believes she has failed to find her spark. Joe replies to her with,
Your spark isn't your purpose. That last box fills in when you're ready to come live. And the thing is, you're pretty great at jazzing.
Another moral of the film Soul is to treat life as a rare gift and appreciate being alive. Richard Dawkins has a great quote from his book Unweaving the Rainbow, where he says, "We are going to die, and that makes us the lucky ones. Most people are never going to die because they are never going to be born. The potential people who could have been here in my place, but who will in fact never see the light of day, outnumber the sand grains of Arabia." This quote really puts life in perspective, as I often forget what a special privilege it really is to be alive. The odds of us being born are actually so small that you can technically say they are zero. Scientists estimate that the odds of you or me being born are 1 in 400 trillion. That is absolutely insane, and as a result, it is quite miraculous and extraordinary to exist. So in a way, each and every one of us is a wonder and phenomenon. We're also gifted with the ability to think complex thoughts and as a result have control of our future and choices. Most of us are privileged enough to live without the struggle for survival and are often left with questions about what we should do with our time on Earth. The film is encouraging us to live life to the fullest and treat every day as a blessing, as we never know what day will be our last. Pixar's representation of the afterlife was very subdued, and it left everything about the world of the afterlife open so that each viewer could incorporate their beliefs into it. For example, the great beyond is illustrated as a staircase into a white abyss. You cannot see what's past the staircase, and since Joe Gardner never climbs up to the top, the great beyond is left completely open to interpretation. After Joe dies, he is placed on the staircase and walks by several people who are content with their deaths and their passing. Confused by their calmness, he frantically questions why they seem so okay with it, and they reply with,
Exciting, isn't it?
No, listen, I have a gig tonight. I can't die now.
Well, I really don't think you have a lot to say about this.
We are to presume that all of these people have lived full and rich lives and are not riddled with regret like Joe is. They have found meaning in their lives and are ready to leave Earth and travel to whatever the great beyond is. The lesson in this is that those who have chosen to savor every moment of life and have made the most out of their lives do not fear death, but instead pass on in peace.
Chuck Palahniuk, the writer of Fight Club, once said,
"If death meant just leaving the stage long enough to change costume and come back as a new character, would you slow down or speed up?" That question is important because if the answer is to speed up, it means that something in life is not fulfilling, and as Frankl has stated, we have it in our power to change that. In his adventure, Joe also runs into lost souls on the astral plane, which are a visual representation of people who are alive but are not truly living. They are represented by large Navy monsters who have one eye and large limbs. They are the embodiment of gloom and have fallen into what Frankl would call the existential vacuum, which is to feel that life is meaningless and as a result to be empty, isolated from the world, and alone. Viktor Frankl argues that it is the existential vacuum that leads to depression, addiction, and aggression. The director, Peter Docter, describes the lost souls as people who get caught up in something that isn't necessarily bad, cooking, video games, art, and as a result of those obsessions, neglect everything in their life and are missing out on all that life has to offer. It is brilliantly shown in a scene where a man is working a soulless office job, and it looks like his happiness, or quite literally his soul, is deteriorating.
What am I doing with my life? I'm alive! I'm alive! Free yourselves!
A character called Moonwind saves him by playing him music with the rest of his band. He is a mystic who is able to cross over to the astral planes, and he devotes his life to bringing lost souls back to their bodies. Moonwind is one of my favorite characters in the film, as he is an example of how money doesn't necessarily bring you happiness, and that happiness can be found doing something as simple as twirling a sign on the streets of Manhattan. Soul is a film that came out at a time where the world needed this story most. A story that reminds us that despite everything going on in the world around us, we can still stop and admire the gift that is life. In the film, 22 had many mentors who lived extraordinary lives. However, each of those mentors, whether it was Vincent van Gogh or Johnny Cash, failed to help her find her spark. What I love is that Joe, a quote-unquote ordinary, regular person, helps her realize how extraordinary life can be. It is a reminder to all of us that life is special no matter who you are, and that each life is meaningful no matter your circumstances. I hope you enjoyed this video essay, and I really hope to do more videos like this in the future. Let me know in the comments below what your favorite part of the film was. My favorite part was when Joe sacrificed his life so that 22 could live after realizing that his life was meaningful after all.
But Joe, this means you won't get to...
It's okay. I already did. Now it's your turn.
I personally think that the film's emotional message would have hit even harder if he didn't receive the second chance at life, but it was still a very powerful moment. I'm excited to hear all of your thoughts, and I wish you all the best. Goodbye.